And this relates to our and I'm taking full use of Jordan not being here. This relates to our
Big Australia.
my last point, not Big Australia.
Yeah.
The Quad. The Quad is a political coalition, let's say, which is it consists of 4 countries.
Do they all ride quad bikes to their meetings?
That's the only thing that's left. It's got Australia, it's got India, it's got the US and Japan.
This wasn't anything to do with Keating.
No, it has a lot to do. It's actually Obama's brainchild. When Obama came into power, he was a smarter man, so he had this policy called Pivot to Asia, which his analysis was, we're too bogged down in the Middle East. The Middle East is useless. We're going to be self-sufficient in oil soon. We don't really need their oil anyways. We really need to focus on Asia Pacific, where we're losing our prominence. Mm-hmm. Correctly so. And then that's when he came to Australia and he made the memorable Pivot to Asia speech. But one of the other things that comes from it is the Quad, which is the alliance between these 4 countries that I've mentioned to counter Chinese influence.
Right.
Or at least that's what we've been told.
I see why you were waiting for Jordan not to be here.
No, the reason... Okay, I'm not giving you... On this particular... Even though the last segment had a lot of my opinions, I'm not going to give you my opinions on this.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the opinions... Not opinions, sorry. Facts from a recently declassified document, U.S. government document, right?
Holy shit.
So in early January 2021, the U.S. government declassified a document prepared for the Trump administration. It's called the U.S. Strategic Framework for Indo and Pacific. Now, again, these are quotations. The objective of U.S. presence in Asia Pacific is, quote, maintain U.S. primacy in the region. Understandable. The drafters of the 2018 policy from U.S. National Security Council noted that the threat from China was not from its military. Quoting, rather, the United States is worried about Chinese developments in, quote, cutting-edge technology, including artificial intelligence and biogenetics. The U.S. government's objective, according to the document, was to maintain American industry's innovation edge vis-a-vis China, which does not only mean to enhance U.S. industry, but also to prevent China from getting access to technology and finance. Loss of U.S. preeminence in the Indo-Pacific would weaken our ability to achieve U.S. interests globally. This is what the U.S. is saying, right? But the challenge posed by China is different. China is the only country with economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to seriously challenge the stable and open international system. Systems, rules, and values. Anyways, what this document is essentially... No, these are the quotes that I highlighted.
Oh, okay.
What this document is essentially saying is that U.S. is not necessarily afraid of China because of its military. The military is big, but the U.S.
is big
even today dwarfs Chinese military. Russian military was always really big, right? But the U.S. didn't think that Russia was nearly as big of a problem as they think that the Chinese are. Because U.S. basically has had the supremacy of cutting-edge technology throughout the world. Or even if it is not U.S., let's say it's Japanese or it's European, it's affiliated with the U.S. Chinese are now making indigenous cutting-edge technologies, right? I remember when I was at university when Chinese first banned Facebook in China, early days, there was this whole problem. There was this hue and cry. I remember I had to write like a paper on it too, which was about how this is against freedom of expression, blah, blah, blah. I remember writing a paper on which my professor penalized for me for. I tried to write in that paper, I tried to argue at that point that this has nothing to do with freedom of speech. This is a protectionist policy to develop their own platforms. They don't want US-based platform, and that's obviously what US would want. US would want
both.
Facebook to be. You could be both, but their argument was that we want to make our indigenous ones, right? Facebook is happy with everyone using their platforms. They start hating it when people start developing their own. And and they're right. The 21st century supremacy is going to be based on owning these technologies.
True.
So they have an incentive to stop China, basically contain them so that they don't take over their technological supremacy. And how do they do it? They do it by forming a coalition, which is the Quad.
Right.
China, US, Japan,
What do they,
and India.
What do they do?
Well, one of the things that has just come up is that China was supplying vaccines to. Well, this is our job, right? Which is a good thing, but like I'll tell you why it can go bad. So China was supplying vaccinations to a lot of these third world countries that couldn't afford it, the South Pacific, and the U.S. and all of us, all of the Quad has come together and said, look, China is gaining a lot of influence in these countries. We need to counter this. So Australia will contribute, but you need to start supplying vaccines to your neighbors so that they don't completely go towards China.
Right.
Which is a good thing. And they're saying that we'll help you pay the bills for it, which is why Australia has ordered 150 million vaccines or some shit, right? We have a population of only 24 million. The intended purpose is for it to go to a lot of these other countries to buy influence. Now, this is a good thing. Who would hate developing countries that desperately need vaccines to get vaccines? But the intention is bad. The intention isn't that we need to make sure that the world is vaccinated because this is a global
strengthen
pandemic.
economic.
It is to buy influence so that you can resist China.
Yeah.
Which is, again, causing more frictions. So what I'm essentially saying is, and this is the controversial aspect, and this is my opinion. You may choose to not accept it. You may choose to accept it. We're being played by the US over here. We're not nearly getting the same level of benefits. The drawbacks for us are much higher. The drawbacks for US are minimal. In fact, I suppose if I was an American, I wonder if I would be against it. I probably would because of my anti-war stance, but in terms of an economic point of view, they're not wrong. Why would you want to give up the top floor? You'd want to keep pushing off the ladder, right? But they're involving us. And we are not at the top of the ladder.
It's the same old story.
We are going to suffer from this, is my opinion. And we really, again, my
It's cool, dude. You're allowed to say whatever you want.
but my opinion has always been that we cannot be aligned. We need to have a non-aligned approach.
Leave the Quad.
Not the Quad, but be a force for good in the Quad. Be the force that says, hey, how about instead of fighting for influence with China and Papua New Guinea, we try to solve Papua New Guinea's problem by working with the Chinese. That will build confidence between our two countries. It would solve vaccination issues in Papua New Guinea, and it would generally be a force for good, rather than saying that, hey, you know what, this is how. So the Chinese, for instance, have said anyone that wants to come to China needs to get the Chinese vaccine. Right? This is their effort to counter us and the US saying we don't trust Chinese vaccines. We're not gonna use them at all.
No,
so they're saying, okay, if you want to come to China, then you have to take our vaccine. What I'm saying is all of these things should have been decided on their merit rather than who owns the vaccine. Because this is only going to cause more rifts in the future.
Wait, what do you mean on their merit?
What I'm saying is that if we wanted to reject the Sinovac or whatever the Chinese vaccine is, or for that matter, Sputnik vaccine, we needed to have done enough testing to say that this is a bad vaccine.
You mean it shouldn't have been politically motivated?
Should not have been politically motivated. It should not have been based on where it's coming from. It should have been based on how good the vaccine is. And if, let's say, TGA came up to an independent conclusion that Sinovac is a good vaccine, we needed to put that in our mix as well. And if they had come up with the conclusion that it's not a good vaccine, we need to say, okay, these are our reservations. This is why we don't think it's a good vaccine. You might use it, but we're just not going to give it to Australians. And that would have been fine, as long as the motivations were right.
There's a lot of stalemates in that is stopping what you would like to happen. One being the Libs here. It's never going to happen with the Libs, so you need Labor in. And also, I think, from my little knowledge or understanding on how Biden's going, seems to me that Biden is just as harsh on China that Trump was.
This is what I've been like arguing even before Trump Trump left.
There's no tariffs though. He took the tariffs off, right?
This is the thing that both the elites are actually united on. So actually, there's a silver lining over there. So at least there's some things that they agree with.
But hold on, Biden has been, he lifted those tariffs that Trump was like tariffs on China, right?
No, he hasn't. He would lift them based on certain preconditions. Like one of the preconditions,
he hasn't lifted them.
No, he hasn't lifted them. He is willing to talk about it, but he needs to basically
because it seems to me like, you know, and everyone knows I'm not some like pro CCP dude. That is true, yes. That's not me at all. But I'm very happy and very glad that China doesn't. Their economy isn't based on the military, on America's model. They're not like an empire like that. They're based on infrastructure, and I think like thank God for that. And you know, just in that fact alone, I would like to think it's not like the America Russia Cold War thing where they're pointing nukes at each other. It's like it seems like China, apart from all its downfalls, which I could list endlessly. I mean, I think everyone knows about the downfalls and like the negatives about China. But if you look at the positives, it seems as if it doesn't seem that unreasonable to want to deal with them on a level that could kind of benefit everyone. Doesn't seem that unreasonable.
We should. I think we should look at it from what is the policy that is going to benefit us as an Australian. But our leaders should really be just thinking about that.
But that's not like
what
big
is
picture,
in the interest of Australians.
But that's not like a big picture. I mean,
it doesn't matter. That's what they've been elected for. They've not been elected by Kansas. They've been elected by New South Wales, Victoria.
Yeah, but we're just proxies. I mean, but they have been. But like, we're in a globalized world. There's accesses. There's alliances. Like, there's alliances. That's how it goes. Like, there's China and Africa, and they have an alliance, and there's Japan. You know, the Quad. Like, I would love for the world to operate on a level of not isolationist? What's it called? Populism, where it's like, let's build our own leather shoes again, and they'll last 2 lifetimes. I'm all for that. I love Australia just to work on Australia's behalf. But when we're buying goods from China and buying and trading, and you know, our fucking McCain's chips came from Poland. Unfortunately, that's not how it works.
I understand that an alignment is important, but those alignments and alliances are based on your national interest. That's where alignments come from.
Not really. They're not, though.
Always, as a rule.
But that's not how they work.
They do every time. Every alliance is based on national interest, or at least what's the perceived national interest for that country?
Perceived is
national interest.
But it's not even that. It's not even perceived national interest. It's kowtowing. It's like America wanted us to buy these defunct fucking submarines, so we'll do it. Just why did we do that?
But I think
that's
what we
economically
really need
dumb.
to be like taking into consideration is that African proverb. You know, when 2 elephants fight, grass gets trampled. And we unfortunately could be this grass because look at Philippines. Philippines has been basically a colony of the U.S. since the beginning.
Right.
Philippines has been heavily aligned with the U.S.
Okay.
And Philippines has always been America's bulwark against early Chinese expansion. When China was not that big, they used Philippines. Now, obviously, things have gotten bigger. You've got to involve Japan and Australia. But initially, when you had things like Philippines. Now, the Filipino President Duarte, went automatically from being from one of the allied countries to being like a bad player. And it all boils down. He recently gave a very candid interview in which he was saying, and these were his words, Obama was crazy. He wanted me to fight China. I couldn't do it. That was his response to it. He was saying he was mental because, look, the U.S. would obviously want to use you even during World War II, you know, when the fight started, it didn't start with France, it didn't start with the British attacking Germany directly. The war began in Italy. The war was being played out in France. Basically, when you've got 2 big elephants, the wars really affect the weaker nations first. Until it gets really intense, it's going to be played around proxies. And we will be that proxy. That's why Philippines quickly switched over. The context of the Philippines switchover is also really interesting because there was an international court. There was a court case between Philippines and China about these man-made islands. These islands that China was building.
Yeah.
Right? And the court case was won by the Philippines. I can't remember the UN body that does the arbitration, but they basically ruled in favor of Philippines, saying that China is illegally making these islands and Philippines has the right over them. And Philippines responded by giving it to China. Not because they were wrong, but because they realized that fighting over it is going to cause them more problems in the long run than giving up over it.
So wait a sec. The Philippines went to the UN to complain that the Chinese...
The U.S. lobbied Philippines to go to the UN.
Yep, and they lost.
And Philippines won, and China lost.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
So China couldn't make them.
They still made him, and Philippines said, okay, you can make them. Because Philippines... Look, the U.S. obviously wants someone to keep rising up to China. But the question is it in Philippines' interest to do it or not? Even though you have to swallow a bitter pill. They were legally right. It was part of their territory. So by all means, they should have actually fought for it. But then their president realized that that's probably not going to be in the interest of my people in the long run. Because you can't choose your neighbors.
But then it always comes down to the argument of like, how much power? You give them too much power.
Well, that's the line that you need to balance, right?
But that's the question, because everyone says that, it's almost like, I know it's almost like so simplistic that it's a childish thing to say, but you never know someone's intentions or their capabilities until they have total control.
Yes,
say what you will about America.
What you do know is that if you keep suppressing a rising power, they will attack you. That we already know. Like when we talk, look, the thing is, when you look at these kind of wars, right, people always go towards World War II. Like, could you really reason with Hitler? Did you have to fight with Hitler? And you know what? In hindsight, I would say, no, you didn't have an option. You had to fight with Hitler. So people apply that same logic to China, that you need to fight with them. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to accept fascism in your country? But they also don't, they focus on that one war, which was absolutely necessary. But then there's also a war like World War I, which arguably was not necessary to engage.
I don't know much about World War I. I know like the Ferdinand dude got shot.
They compared today's world to be very similar to the world before World War I. What you had in World War I was that Britain used to be a very strong power. And then countries like Germany started to gain some power. And what ended up happening was that countries like the UK and France were like, you know what? We got to stop this. Just like China.
Right.
We need to stop Germany.
Is that what World War I was about?
And then eventually what you had, which is exactly what's happening today, they reached a Mexican standoff where there were enough alliances that everyone just had a revolver over each other's head. And they were like, if you shoot, I shoot. And the other person, if you shoot, I shoot. And you were just standing in that situation until that Ferdinand thing happened. And that was a catalyst. Where one person blew the trigger, the other person blew the trigger, and everyone started going.
Who killed who in the Ferdinand thing?
It started off with the Balkan states and the Austrian-German Empire being... So, it started with the proxies. It didn't start with the main guys.
Yeah.
But the main guys ended up being involved. And First World War was catastrophic. Catastrophic to the point where, like, there's other issues that happen with it, but most historians, and I'm saying this as a general rule, most historians would say that it was not necessary for Great Britain to get involved in the First World War.
Right.
Once it started, it was something else, and most historians would also argue that there was no other option for Great Britain but to fight with Germany in the Second World War. But here's another thing. The reason why the Second World War took place was because after the First World War, the terms that were set with the Germans were so repressive that they had to come and snap back. You didn't give them enough room. You didn't give them room before, and then you didn't give them room to the point where you had Hitler. And yes, at that point, it was
So
too
you're
much.
saying that history is repeating itself right now.
I'm saying that the war with China is not like the Second World War. It is like the First World War.
Gotcha.
And the First World War needed to be dealt differently from the Second World War.
That's a fucking good point, dude. That's a really I feel educated right now. You don't learn this in school. No, honestly, that's a fucking pretty profound point. What do you guys agree that's a profound point?
Again, my
I feel like
opinions, and they do not represent the brand of Friendly Jordies by any means.
Public culture. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of
Christians and Jews are trying to resurrect the Roman Empire and bring about the end times. Look up who set the terms and what happened to Germany. Yeah,
I'm not sure what he's talking about there. Weimar Republic. Look, those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it. I don't think Biden is a stupid man. Is it the case that the powers that be, the military-industrial complex, the banks, whatever, that they just don't care, or that they're stupid, or that they have too much power?
Well, the predicament that Biden is going through, actually, Obama described it really well. Towards the end of his term, his second term, he said that, I'm actually a good president now because I've got so much experience. So he described America. He's like, people think that America is like a speedboat. You become a president, you get behind the wheel, and then if you're going in a direction which is wrong, you quickly turn your direction and you move towards the other way. He's like, that's not what the U.S. is. U.S. is a massive ship. It's the Titanic. If you try to move it now, the effects are going to be felt 5 years later. It's much harder to turn a massive ship.
That's kind of
so
a profound
Biden has the
thought
same
as well.
predicament. Like when Trump left, it's not a speedboat. He can't come in and he can switch around. I know Biden personally is a dove. He is very risk averse.
Yeah.
I know if you ask Biden personally, he would rather not have a war with China. We already know for a fact that Biden has spent enough time with the Chinese to know that they're not irrational players. They're not mental. Like people think that anyone that's not you is just suicidal. He recognizes them as rational players. But Biden also recognizes that there are certain economic interests that the US has. For example, let's boil it down to like a very basic one that Australia had to deal with. Huawei establishing the 5G network in places like Australia and in the UK. Huawei, the Chinese company, has the best technology for 5G, has the cheapest technology for 5G. It makes the most economic sense for them to for us to give them the contract. US, on the other hand, is not there yet. But their economic interest is to make sure that Chinese don't take over these markets because it's their market. So they force us. How do they force us? They say, if you accept Huawei, we will not share any intelligence with you under the garb that the information that we will provide you will be compromised because the Chinese have your infrastructure plan, which might be true, which might not be true. But here's a definite interest. If you use Huawei, you're not using T-Mobile. And that's what we care about. We want to be the hegemon of technological superiority in the world. And give us time. Give us 5 years, 10 years, T-Mobile will get there. And then we will supply it to you. And because we're not there yet, you will not have access to that advanced technology until we are able to provide you. And you know what? Australia has a difficult choice now. On the other hand, it makes absolute economic sense for us to switch to Huawei and get our 5G network going. It will increase our economic profitability. But at the same time, we might have to piss off our alliance that is giving us this naval protection.
Basically, daddy.
So we are in a difficult situation. What I'm arguing is that you need smart people to be able to navigate through this difficult situation. The Liberal Party, this is a bit partisan now, but I want to say this. The Liberal Party's literal policy is, well, we just have to do whatever the US says.
I think that's understood
that's really
from, I think that everyone knows that. And I understand it on a nostalgic level where it's like, I understand it on a level of I don't know, we fought in wars together, we have the history together, you know, bully beef, surfing. We both like surfing, and we're Western, you know, we have a lot in common. We're Westerners and everything. I get it. But it's definitely very naive. I think that China could be like, it scares me thinking the whole of like too much power, but your World War I metaphor is like a pretty fucking good one. And what's the alternative? Like we either take a risk and see if they're fine, or we take a risk and go to war. I know which one's a better option. So you know, it makes sense. And you know, it's ironic that they're bankrolling us now by, not now, but, you know, China buying our resources is the reason why we're so rich. And it's kind of, you can't have your cake and eat it. You know, it's kind of been like, we're being hard on China. Hey, China, can you still keep buying our resources? Like, well, which one is it? You can't do both. And like, it's hard, you know, it's very difficult. I mean, I think Kevin Rudd was the closest prime minister we had that could do this, but is it possible?
Paul Keating has really good ideas on this too. And to your point where...
Because Kevin balanced.
Both of them balanced. Look, no one... I would never say this, neither would I have wanted to say we need to side with China. I'm not comfortable with it.
No,
As
I mean
someone with my views, I am not comfortable with completely siding with China.
Yeah.
But I'm also not comfortable with completely siding with the US.
Totally.
And, you know, if you ask me, like, personally, what would be better if we completely sided with China or we completely sided with the US? I might even say US. But that's based on...
Because there's political ramifications either way.
And plus, our culture is similar to theirs.
Yeah.
There's so many other reasons why we should be. But it's still suicidal to just completely...
Totally.
Keating always says, like...
Yeah, what does Keating say?
Keating says...
Has he written a book about this yet?
Yeah, he's written a fair bit.
About China?
About China. And he talks about China heaps. And he's a very rational voice on this topic.
I'd like to know what he says.
Of like, every time we say, but then the US would be pissed off. And he's like, you need to develop some balls. And we've been fighting wars with the US for over 100 years now. You do not need to bring out your marriage certificate every week. They know whose side you're on. Just relax, grow some balls, and take some decisions.
Yeah. I mean, Keating was always a very, like, bull ram, like, let's become a republic, let's change the flag, let's, what? Like, he's very like that. Just to be like, come on, let's fucking push ahead. Like, I'm a little bit like, look, just, let's reel it back 10%, buddy. Let's just, you know what I mean? Just with the headstrongness. Obviously an insanely intelligent man and great policy, but like, he's kind of like Jordan, where it's just like, we're doing this now. It's like, dude, that's not a good idea. Too late, see ya! You know, like, that's what Jordan's like. And that's how you get things done. But I wonder if you don't have to pull it out every week. I think maybe you're right. I'd like to think you could pull it out every few months, the marriage certificate.
Yeah.
You know, every few months. Like we get Huawei or whatever, and then...
how about this? This is something that, like, two examples. Like, one is we side with the US in terms of Huawei, right? We don't do it because it's too much of a risk. However, do we really need to be a signatory over the COVID origin movement?
What's
where
that?
like we were one of the forerunners of one of the top countries that were
putting an inquiry
into it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that inquiry was necessary or what. I'm just saying, do we really need to be?
Yeah, I know. Was anything found from that?
Well, the WHO went and they came up with this. With their findings are that it probably started in a wet market, which is being criticized. Again, it is not a concern for me of where it started because it doesn't matter.
It's happened.
We have to deal with it. But Australia fucking completely siding and saying that no, we need this inquiry. That meant that our wines are not being able to get exported. Our coal is not being able to get exported. I'm just saying we need to pick our battles.
Dude, it's a rational decision. I mean, everyone says, you know, the conservatives are like the rational, get in the black, be conservative. A conservative choice is picking conservative choices. What does conservative mean? It means to conserve, but I mean, like, it's not that far from rationality.
Try and conserve the economy. You keep making it worse.
No, that's true though. Try to conserve the economy. So let's not do a bogus investigation that is going to hit us with needless tariffs. That's a sensible and like a conservative perspective. So you're right. Like, it's kind of irrational to do that. So like, you know, and again, like I understand there's a lot of, you know, I agree. We shouldn't just side with China. There's a long list of fucked up things that are on their resume, but like, anything can happen here. It's like I think people forget. Well, maybe COVID was a bit of a reminder. It's like, you know, life can change pretty instantaneously, pretty quickly, pretty dramatically. So I agree with you. I think that you should pick your battles. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe if we have the chance to not jump on board with like completely superfluous grandstanding and acts of like flexing needlessly. And maybe let's not do that. Maybe let's look a little bit more tactical.
Okay, this was
right.
Personally, yeah, 100%. But like, this was personally something that I found a little embarrassing, which went, you know, it didn't get noticed. But one of the embarrassing things was that at U.S. pressure, we did that COVID inquiry.
That was U.S. pressure. Oh, from Trump.
Yeah,
from Trump,
of course.
Right.
It was. We independently, even the Liberal Party is not dumb enough to just come up with that idea by themselves. So give credit where it's due. They did it because of pressure. Now, what happens as a result of that was that the U.S. put sanctions on us. The China put sanctions on us on certain things. We were left high and dry. We had to like say, we need. The rest of the world needs to come to our back. No one did, right? People were just too afraid. They were like, look, we don't want sanctions too. Trump didn't even, after getting us to do it. Biden administration comes in. One of the first things that Biden does is tell China, what's happening with these sanctions with Australia? China, they're our mate. You can't do this. To which our government goes, yes, our big brother has finally stood up. This was what happened. I looked at it as like, what kind of a pathetic administration are you running that you're dependent on external factors to fucking stick up for yourself? But why aren't you in a situation where you're able to dictate terms yourself?
I have something to tell you. Australia's always been like that.
Look, if you look at this situation, we were put into it by the US. And then if the US comes and sticks up for us, that's the least they can do. You don't need to be fucking thankful about that. You put us in that situation, so the least you can do is stick up for this. But here's what I say. Australia should have been like, okay, we're not going to get 5G. We're not going to get Huawei because maybe that will compromise our telecommunications. We get your point. But we're not going to be part of this COVID inquiry. No tariffs would have been put on Australia. And no one would have needed to stick up for us.
That's what should have happened. But I think there's an explanation for that. I think psychologically, and I'm not speaking for Australians in general, but I think there's a proportion of Australians that psychologically, I mean, I feel like this even subconsciously, that we are just still this like baby state of the British Empire. It's like there's mummy over there and daddy over there. That's what it feels like. It feels like obviously we're our own country. I mean, we have our own long history, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that like I think that there is a contingency on a political level for a lot of Australians to have this thing of like we're sister colony, like the UK is mum. I mean, definitely for the libs, and Australia and America's dad. And like because of that psychology, for someone like you might be like, why have we got any balls? But for someone like me, I'm like, that's all I know.
And I understand that. Look, I don't want to be. I understand.
And I'm not saying that's good.
No, I mean, like I know what you're saying, but like I'm just saying that's a very.
It's stuck in the past. Right?
Yeah, because we're moving towards a really fractured world.
Yeah.
Mommy and daddy are having fights. Mommy and daddy are having fights with other people who are uncles.
I know, exactly.
And so like being on side of one guy is a difficult thing because your uncle might kill your daddy.
Exactly. And
so you need to have a good relationship with your uncle, daddy, and mummy.
And also, this is the thing. Mum and dad live in, let's say, what's a good metaphor? this isn't the right metaphor. Just purely geographically. No. Here's a good one. Mum and dad live in Brisbane.
Yeah.
But we live in Tasmania.
Yeah.
So
basically, the stepdad lives way closer to us than daddy and mum.
Stepdad lives way closer than where mum and dad live. So even on a geographical level,
stepdad also gives us our allowance.
Yeah. Stepdad gives us our allowance. So it's like mum and dad give us an allowance too, but stepdad is like
slowly up in the ante.
Yeah, and not only up in the ante, he can help us a lot or he can fuck us a lot. He can fuck us over a lot. And mum and dad are so far, and it's like, but you're my dad, you know, like you're my family. I love you, and it's like, yeah, I know. We'll talk, and then you're like, the uncle or the friend maybe is it's not necessarily family, but they're kind of the one I see every day. They're the one that I deal with. I live in that area. I don't live in Newcastle. I live in Tasmania. We're in fucking Asia. So you know, I understand that people want to be nostalgic to some degree, but maybe we can still hold on to some level of nostalgia and stuff of like the wartime, or, you know, like the comrades or whatever. We can still hold on to that and not be just, not live and die by like the fact that we both surf.
I would very much agree with that.
But that seems almost like, it's so stupid. But that issue seems almost as almost as difficult as like the climate change issue. It's such a big cultural issue because sometimes it's, you know, so like, hard, man. Like, it's so hard. I know Jordan's not here, and you'll just think that I'm like he's speaking to me on a little earpiece. But I think we just need to have Kevin for life, because like I don't think he's like the most charming man in the world, the smartest man in the world, but he's definitely smart. And he's definitely charming, and he was definitely forward-thinking. And, you know, he was less radical than Paul Keating. Like, he was a reasonable, fuck me, if you want to find a centrist that is reasonable, that can talk to mum, talk to dad, talk to the neighbors. And I think he might have been the only one that could keep them all happy.
One more person that dad needs to talk to is the Australian public. Look, right now, our strategy is based on... there's leaders that follow their constituency, and then there's leaders that tell their constituency what's up.
Yes.
So you need someone like Kevin Rudd to come up and explain. Right now, Sky News puts pressure on the Liberal government. China, look at them. They're taking too much. What are you doing? Like, we need more submarines. And the Liberal Party's going, on it.
Yeah.
Some leader needs to come up and tell the Australian public, look, these are the facts.
That would be nice.
That we're dealing with.
That would be nice.
Now,
ScoMo is not that.
I would recommend.
ScoMo is more the Trumpian.
You need like great leaders for that, but someone needs to explain to them that you might need to reform some of your views on this, because we need.
That's what has to happen, because I have watched for Jordan for my job, for my day job. I've watched basically every piece of Kevin Rudd talking about the Murdoch empire piece of media there is. So his News Corp thing, his Senate hearing, there's been a whole bunch of 2-hour conversations. And one of his main points was that he has a think tank in America. He's not a dumb man. The Americans just poached him straight away when he got out, because like, this guy's a fucking genius. You know, he's a smart man. He understands like bilateral, fucking international everything.
Chinese did too, which is a testament to his intellect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah, definitely. But what I was going to say was, what was I going to say? So like, he spends a lot of time in America. His whole point is Sky News is the Australian wing of Fox. Murdoch is trying to create a similar polarized environment in Australia that is happening in America, or it has happened in America. He said it is happening slowly, consciously, on a grounds roots level. This is what is happening, and this is the trajectory we're going in if Murdoch has 70% control of the media. Number one YouTube page on YouTube, Sky News, all this shit. Mass control.
He's a supervillain.
Yeah. So Trump, fucking Kev was saying like, is this the road we want to go down? Because it's happening now. It's just more polarization. I mean, fuck, I found myself swept up in it. It's so easy, especially if you're an emotional person. It's so easy to get swept up on rhetoric as opposed to facts. And, you know, Kev was just being like, alternative facts is a term now. It's like, this shit is getting out of hand, and America is the canary in the coal mine. And he's right. And it'd be nice to just cut that head off and be like, let's just not do that. You know, it's a good society. We have Medicare. We have a good working wage. We have good social systems. We have good hospitals. We have good schools, had good schools, it's already slowly happening, you know? And so like someone like that, like a centrist or not even Keating, just someone like that that's like reasonable. He doesn't hate Americans. He doesn't hate anyone. He's just a pragmatic person that you know, just trying to tie the ends together and be like, let's just be reasonable here and have good policy. And like, we're not going to, you know, I have a think tank in America and I love America. I understand like America is like they still are the leaders of the free world, despite all their horrible lapses in like, you know, human rights. You know, that's what Jordan wouldn't say that because he's like so intense on his opinions. He's so like, you know, like tunnel vision with that shit. But like, you know, America still is the leader of the free world, and he sees that. So like, we need another Kev. We need just Kevin in again. Because
well,
do you agree?
I think so. I think we need someone like Kevin Rudd.
Yeah.
But I
like
also
you said,
know that there was a reason why he was kicked out.
Yeah, of course.
And it was more than just, he's slightly less popular now.
No, of course it was. And like, that's why
this
shit is so, it's
there
so
are forces
complicated.
that do not want someone to balance.
No, of course that. And
but anyways, we've been out of time. We have actually gone over the normal time of it. But
who needs you, man?
thank you guys for joining us today. We appreciated all of you that ended up sticking around.
Thanks so much for hanging around. I hope you enjoyed it. Kevin forever.
And again, if anyone works with refugees or asylum seekers or know someone that works with refugees, please hit me up on Instagram or podcast at Friendly Geordies.
10 out of 10, great pod. Miss Love for PM. Finally, someone says it. Bunning snags reform for all.
Yeah, cool. So like I've been, it's like, so yeah, if anyone, please hit me up. I need to forward some contacts.
If there's anyone out there that's involved, what do you want to get them on? How can they get to us?
Yeah, email at podcast@friendlygeorge.com or hit me up on Instagram. Anyway, honestly, like I think there's a few people that really need your help. So like any way you can grab a hold of me, I would. And
thanks for all the positive words.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone's very happy.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching this, and we'll see you guys next week.
And we'll see you on the Up Late. Join Patreon.
Unfortunately, next week, Jimmy is going to be around.
He's back. But yeah, if you want more of this, just all you got to do is join up on Patreon because we're doing another one right now, and we'll probably just delve deeper. So if you want more, a small donation, and it's going to... Yeah, an hour
All the money that you give on Patreon is going to be donated to the selfless trust of ourselves.
Well,
basically means just give it to us.
But that's how we do it. That's how we can do it. It's tough out there, mate.
It's a selfless trust of benefiting ourselves. All right, see you guys next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.